Hey everyone, so you got me again. Sorry, this is still not the official intro of Season 12. Daniel's still out of the States, so I don't know, you gotta deal with me. Sorry. So with this season, we are doing the top 10 states that have downloaded or listened to our podcast the most in the United States. We're also going to throw in a couple from England. Those were special requests, so we'll toss those in at the end of the season. As always, we appreciate everyone who listens and reaches out and all that. So thank you for doing that. Thank you so much for keeping this podcast alive. Hopefully by next podcast, we'll have a proper introduction. Daniel, looking at you. But if not, you'll have to deal with me again. So hope everyone enjoys the episode. Take it easy.
So here we are, getting right into Season 12.
We just hop right into it.
And if anybody didn't listen to the intro to Season 12 episode, I'm hurt. But also, the important takeaway is that we are doing movies that are either set in or were filmed in the 10 states that download episodes of The Horrific the most.
Yeah.
Which is pure pandering. Purely a numbers play. But I'm here for it.
I'm a panderer, dude.
Yeah. It's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we got this far. Obviously giving the people exactly what they want. Not the case. But this week we're going to kick it off with Florida. And rather than just doing local news coverage, we decided to watch a movie called 2000 Maniacs from 1964.
Yep.
Had you heard of this movie before?
I had not. Well, I'd like to say I might have based off the remake, but I honestly couldn't tell you if I had or not.
Yeah, I definitely had seen the title, but I knew nothing about it and had no frame of reference or expectation going in.
Yeah. It definitely made sense after watching.
Yeah. So before we get too into it, I was browsing Wikipedia about this movie and while I was getting ready for this episode, and I noticed that they called this movie Hicksploitation.
I did too, yeah.
Which made me laugh harder than anything in the movie, which was like partially dark comedy, I guess. But then I started looking at the other movies that we're going to be watching, and there's like a lot of them. So I think this season may come off as like unintentionally disrespectful.
That's hilarious.
To the people in states that have supported us the most. Which feels very much in our wheelhouse. So
yeah,
here we go.
I love it.
But yeah, I will do the introduction, then you can do the fun facts, and then we will get into those Southern Pride details.
Love it.
In 1964, box office spectaculars brought us 2000 Maniacs, a grindhouse horror film written and directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis. This film tells the story of a group of northern motorists who get lured into a small southern town and tortured by the locals, ostensibly as revenge for some Union soldiers killing a bunch of people in the town 100 years prior. 2000 Maniacs was made on an estimated budget of $65,000, and I couldn't find any box office numbers, just a bunch of discussion about how it was heavily edited at the direction of the MPAA and not given a very wide distribution. This movie can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video.
Perfect.
What did you learn about this movie?
So I learned that a lot of the buildings in this film are still in existence in St. Cloud, Florida. That's where this was filmed.
Do you think... I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you think that the people of Florida made this as a diss to the people of Georgia?
I didn't even think about it, but yes, okay. I do. That's hilarious.
So take that, Georgia.
They're like,
please
hey,
go on.
We're going to film this in 2 weeks. It's going to be in the middle of Florida. No one goes there.
Yeah.
And we're going to make fun of Georgia while we're at it. Like we're in. So also, this was, some of the places where this was filmed, it was also shot in Orlando, Florida, which is now occupied by Walt Disney World, the land where it was filmed. They don't own, or they kind of own Orlando, I feel like. It's coming from a guy who lived in Altamont Springs for 6 months. I know. So those are my facts.
But yeah, so this movie was interesting. It was definitely one of the lower budget ones that we reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
The audio was really hard to hear, and like even the subtitles just said all caps inaudible several times.
That's hilarious.
And the film quality was extra rough.
Yeah. So like when we came up with this idea for this season, I would also like to take credit for coming up with this idea. However, this decision was a mutual decision.
That's true.
I was watching it and I was like, I can't get mad at us. We both decided on this one.
Yeah, no, I'm not calling it a bad choice. I'm just saying that if someone else who is listening was thinking about watching this movie for the first time, you need to set expectations appropriately. This was a pretty low budget movie that was made with not very much technology in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And so I would say the acting was abysmal, but
yes.
I did like that it sort of embraced that it was kind of like goofing over the top. Like they were not going for like a super serious portrayal. And it definitely had that style that we've talked about before where it's almost more in the style of like a stage play than a movie, where there's a lot of kind of like overacting and exaggerated motions and things. And I think that if the movie had taken itself more seriously, it would have been like unbearable. But the fact that it didn't made it a little easier to deal with some of the rough edges around how it was made.
Yeah, it was definitely like strange. I felt like in between the killings was almost like Dukes of Hazzard content.
Yeah, definitely.
Know? And the other thing I thought was kind of interesting. So the concept of this movie is, was it 6 people get detoured and they go to the city and they're made to seem like they're celebrating Centennial and that they, are going to be the guests for the Centennial or whatever. What's funny about this is there's also an Andy Griffith episode where they do something very similar and the guys end up being the bad guys that they do and they try to rob a bank. This came out in 1964, so I want to know who stole the idea from who. Just saying, it's similar concept minus the killing.
Yeah.
So, it's stolen idea. Sorry,
Maybe
guys.
it was just kind of in the air at the time.
It's true.
Speaking of things that were in the air at the time, when the one guy fell into the quicksand, which was just a puddle, it was really weird because it reminded me of an episode of Radiolab that I heard like years and years and years ago, so I had to go find it. And it's just called Quicksand with a bunch of A's. Mm-hmm. And it talks about how kids in the 2000s aren't scared of quicksand. But like if you grew up in the second half of the last century as a child, you probably spent a lot of time thinking and worrying about quicksand. Mm-hmm. Because in like, I forget what they say, from 1960 to some other year, it like just spiked really, really high, the number of movies and TV shows that referenced quicksand as a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just kind of like went away.
Yeah.
But they were pointing out how you could see it go from this thing that was like a really serious, like scary plot device to almost a thing that was like being used in like a joking way in like cartoons and stuff. And so it kind of like lost its relevance over time. But then in the episode, they were drawing proposing some conclusions around like, at the time it felt like there was a lot more unknown. And as man was looking at the space race and looking at the idea of, traveling to these other planets where you could get stuck or like encountering all this unknown danger, or like, I guess the news media would very regularly use the term quicksand when referring to Vietnam with the idea of like being stuck in something with no ending in sight. And so it sort of had like this, association with the unknown and danger and not knowing how to get out of something. And they were saying, that you could look at sort of the attitude of society at the time and how that was reflected and all things, but which all sounds kind of like over the top and maybe not real to me, but it was a super interesting episode. And so I thought it was funny then to see in this movie that was in the 60s, it was just like the quicksand did not seem nearly as out of place at the time as it does now.
Yeah, I actually saw something on this, and it was like, where's all the quicksand that we used to, like, be afraid of?
Yeah.
It's like, we've never ran into it before, but...
Yeah. So, anyway. Getting things back on track, because I've derailed it.
How's it feel?
Yeah. The soundtrack on this one was crazy to me.
That's where I was kind of getting with, like, the Dukes of Hazzard thing. And I think it was from there, because it was playing, like, like the old Southern music, and it was like super happy and chirpy kind of, but like they just killed someone, for one of the scenes. And so it was just kind of confusing. It was like, what the hell is going on with this? Like,
well, like sometimes the music was kind of like tense and appropriate for the scene, like it supported what was going on, but then a lot of times it was just like a disappointed oboe or something. Like it was almost like kind of a like sitcom background music or something. It was really strange, and so it was kind of hard to get the feel for what the movie was trying to be through a lot of it, because the music just didn't really seem to fit.
It was just interesting. The whole concept of this film, like, even for like a horror film, is like pretty crazy. Like, just the thought of, like, from start to finish, like from what we find out at the end, and like it's just like, I almost believe like Human Centipede more than I believe. You know what I mean? I mean, I know that they're both fake. I get that, but it's just like this is just doesn't seem right. But what can you do? What was the deal with the couple who was just like, they were just like, yep, he cheats, and she was like, 30 seconds later she's making out with a dude.
Why I oughta?
It
was pretty crazy. Like it was a very, very strange movie, but I think the ways that I've tried to make sense of it, right, is that if you like zoom way out and think about it just in the terms of like, what's a bunch of creative ways to kill people, and then like, let's come up with a super basic story to string those all together. I feel like it was a lot of that, which I feel like is a template that has basically been copied by the slasher genre for years and years and years. So if you think about it being like an early exercise in that, where going back to our like horror genres and subgenres list, I think that this one fits into like the gore and disturbing category with like torture and splatter as the subgenres.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a pretty good fit for that, in that that's what the movie wanted to do and what it wanted to be. They obviously spent a lot of time on the practical effects and pulling off what they could with the technology they had. And it was way more about showing like those disturbing scenes and images than it was about creating a compelling story around it to try and create any sort of like psychological fear or anything.
Yeah. And that was 100% the case, like without a doubt.
And so, so that was like, if you can take it on that level, it makes some of the rest of it less obnoxious, I think. Like in the idea of, you could see a lot of people who have made movies since this one would look back on that and think, okay, this is sort of a template that I can follow, in that we start with the group of 6 and then they're in a dangerous situation and they sort of get pulled away one by one and led off from the group, and then eventually there's only 1 or 2 people left and they have to try and make it out. I feel like that general arc is something that's been used over and over and over in horror movies, and it is generally pretty effective, because what I realized as I was watching this was like, as more people die, the ones that they're killing off are the ones that had like moral flaws or reasons that you wouldn't like them as much.
Mm-hmm.
And that almost makes you like the ones who are surviving who don't have any like moral flaws. Like you cheer for them more because it's like, oh, well, by comparison, they deserve to make it out, but you can see all the danger that they're in. And so it's just that little movie trick to get you like more involved in the story or to feel like empathy on behalf of the people that you don't know. I thought like worked even in this movie where it had, you know, like all the non-great production elements.
Yeah, and like you were saying, that's 100% like a formula that's used today.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and you know, for this one, some of the plot devices were not great, but some of the death scenes were kind of creative and entertaining. Like the making the guy roll down the hill in the nail barrel was pretty creative.
Yes.
It's like, who comes up with this?
Really creative.
But it's almost like being presented in like a comical way that makes it more horrific. The way the whole town is just like gleeful about the way they're torturing and killing these tourists.
Happy. Yeah.
The
only one they weren't was it the horse, when the horse pulled the guy apart and they didn't get excited until they started playing like whatever.
Yeah.
Like Dixie
song.
It's
almost like the death wasn't spectacular enough for them. It was kind of a letdown.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way.
So, but yeah, I don't know. And I said, you know, gore and disturbing because it had like the torture and the splatter were definitely part of it. But I noticed also like in our killer subgenre list, there was like slasher is one, and then bumpkin and redneck is another.
Yeah. Yeah.
which I don't know that I totally agree with as like it justifying its own like subgenre, but Hicksploitation is a word, so I guess maybe, I don't know, it was interesting. But I guess like I just see it as like if you're in Florida, that's the way you assume all Georgia people conduct themselves.
That's true. And also, like, is it exploitation if like a lot of Southerners are the ones who are like signing up to film this? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, you know, let it speak for itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the vibe of this movie. I think we've talked through enough of like you can kind of draw your own conclusion on what this movie is and was. But I wanted to ask you what you thought about the ending.
Starting from when they get out.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, kind of the big thing is there's like the big twist to the story where Tom and I don't remember the girl's name make it out and they escape and they get back to town and they find the police officer and then they go back to try and find the town where they had been, you know, where all their friends had been killed, and it's just not there. And then they're looking around for it and they see that the plaque about what had happened to the town is on just a tree stump kind of out in the middle of a field. And then you realize that the town had been like completely destroyed by the Union soldiers during the Civil War and all the people had been killed. And now every 100 years they reappear and murder people. Yeah, for some reason, like as ghosts.
Yeah, to get back at the Yanks for doing it. So, you know, if you think about it, like this film came out in 1964. So like I think there was some thought that was put into this. You know, it's like, hey, next year it's going to be 100 years from Civil War. However, like I can 100% see this film set the stage for 1,000, 2,000 films, that horror films that have come out. You know, it's like they sneak out. There's the intensity. It's the kid give them the key. You know, just that whole thing that happened, the run away, you know, them hauling ass to get out, being chased or whatever. However, it was definitely just like, if you just waited like 10 years ish, you'd have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is like everyone's kind of in on it. So like, I kind of like the idea of them going to the cops and then the cops taking them back to that city to finish whatever they were doing. Like, I just kind of like the we've definitely talked about this before, but like the no one gets out part of horror films.
Yeah, so you wish the cops had been in on it.
I mean,
more so than if it was like the random paranormal thing.
Yeah. Maybe that's like part of the censorship, where they're like it has to be a fake town. Like we can't really make fun of Georgia.
Yeah, and I did really wonder, like how edited was the version that we saw on Amazon Prime? Because if all of the original reels got cut down or something, then we may have been watching not what was the original version, and there may have been more to it that was I don't know, made it a little bit more cohesive story wise, or was more impressive, like spending more time on the practical effects and stuff like that. But yeah, it's hard to judge. I 100% wish it would have ended right after they found that tree stump with the plaque on it. Yeah. Like those extra scenes after that, I didn't think added anything at all. It felt very much like trying to change the focus a little bit of the story. Yeah. Like there was like we'll wrap up the love story and then we'll add some humor between the ghosts just to like soften the blow or something. And I don't know, that just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah, I also think like the people who wrote this just thought that they were the funniest people in the world. Like with some of the conversations that was having or that was being made, because like I get the overly Southern people. Like I know we're in Oklahoma, which is like I'm in Oklahoma, which is weird. Like is it Midwest or South? But like we still hear those Southern accents,
Yeah.
And like it's still like holding a cigarette for a non-smoker. One of my pet peeves. That's obvious another one because it's like that's just like an act, and I can't remember which one I was looking at, but they were like, they were selected for the role because of like being able to do a really good Southern expression. And I don't remember who
mayor guy.
Was it the mayor? Yeah, and I was like, that's okay. Yeah. That makes
sense.
He
does a really good, really insulting Southern accent.
Yeah.
Take that, Georgia.
Yeah. This guy's not even a Southerner. It was just, I think they just thought that they were like super clever. I do think there were some clever things for it. And, we watched it, we got it over with. Technically, I was very thankful it was over with. When it was done, because I was just like, this has gone nowhere. But like you've said, the best part about this is just seeing the influences that have come from this. Which yet again, this came out in '64, and tons and tons of horror films have used the same formula, even the same, not exact story, but same concept.
And that scene at the end where they discover, or you see the tree kind of out in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. That reminded me so much of the ending of High Plains Drifter.
Oh, yeah.
Where, you see the grave and you realize that he's like the spirit of vengeance or what, that sort of paranormal twist to it, or like that moment when all of a sudden you realize there's more to the story. And that, again, obviously this movie had issues with like the way it was made, and it has not aged super well and stuff, but it really did have a lot of elements that we've seen in like a billion movies since then. And I'm not enough of an expert to say that this is the first one to do any of those things, but I think it really did sort of exercise a formula that you would see a lot more of after this movie than before it.
I think it definitely opened the door for a lot of our favorite horror films that have come out. I mean, even Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, it had to have. Yeah. Also, it was the 70s, so what can you do? But, I mean, overall, like I was saying, glad we watched it. Probably won't watch it again unless it's free.
I thought you were going to say you probably wouldn't be going to Georgia, because I sure won't be.
Yeah, no, I can't legally anyways. I can only go to 4 states in the continental United States. And 0 outside of it. But if you guys, the people in Florida that are our listeners, have a better one that we haven't done, or even if we had done,
that's a good call.
Let us know, because I want to definitely, although albeit my 6 months where I lived in Florida, I don't know much about it. So when we were picking them out, we're just like, this one seems interesting. Let's do it. And I say that for the first one. The rest or my bads, if they're bad. But let us know, because I'm definitely interested. And that goes for each one we do. Each state.
Yep.
Only message us if you're in those 10 states. Not really. But if you message us and you're from South Dakota, I ain't responding.
We already got an email rule.
Such an IT response.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. So my favorite character in this movie was Tom. He's the one who tried to make the phone call to the outsiders, and then later found the plaque on the tree and read it and understood what was going on. And the reason I like him, I think, is because for a while I've been workshopping a new superhero that I think I could sell to Marvel, or maybe even DC if I just need the cash.
Yeah.
But he's going to be called Bookworm.
Okay.
And his superpower is just that he proactively reads. So I feel like you could add that character to pretty much any movie plot or real life scenario.
Yeah.
And he would literally just never stop saving the day. Because everybody's like, oh crap, how are we going to find him? What are we going to do? And he'd be like, guys, I just Googled it. We need to go here. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then, you get there on time, or,
yeah.
Or oh, what's the best route? And it's like, I don't know. I'll ask my phone. And then,
right.
Yeah. Or you see the sign that says exit only. He's like, oh, we can't go in there. That door's going to be locked. Let's go through a different one. And I feel like a lot of times, I just blow Sarah's mind, because I'm like, oh no, we need to go over here. And she's like, how did you know that? And I'm like, any one of the 5 signs we passed on the way in?
Yeah. I mean, I love it. However, I kind of like the idea of just calling it anxiety, man. That's how you deal with your anxiety, is being prepared. So.
Yeah, but I mean, this guy's active in the moment. He's driving down the road, and they're trying to, get somewhere in time to save somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees that sign that says left lane closed ahead, and he gets over in that far right lane before there's any stoppage.
Yeah.
And then they cruise on through. They don't lose 45 minutes of the trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Save the day.
Yeah. I love it.
Superhero.
Bookworm. What was it? Bookworm?
Bookworm, yeah.
I like it.